My name is Michał Borowiecki, and I'm a product support expert here for GetResponse MAX. And with me, there is the CEO of Ascend, Todd, who actually was kind enough to share his substantial knowledge with us today. Todd, would you mind introducing yourselves to our attendees?
Yes, it's a pleasure to be here today. Todd Lebo with Ascend 2. We are a research firm. So every year, actually, I was just doing a blog post, and I think we've done over 60 research studies this past year and interviewed over 10,000 marketers about various topics. So hope to be able to provide some helpful information today as you plan for your 2023. What we're going to talk about today comes from a research study we did with GetResponse on multi-channel marketing, specifically for mid-sized companies.
Right, lovely. So, guys, let me briefly walk you through the agenda, and then we'll get into the real thing. So the meeting will last approximately 30 minutes, and we'll do a Q&A session afterwards. Don't worry if you miss some details. The recording with all of the necessary materials will shortly follow up after our webinar is done. But if you have any questions at all to any points we will be discussing, please feel free to share them on the chat window. We're always happy to share our knowledge. And more extensive questions are always welcome at the end of the webinar, the Q&A session, right? Lovely. Now, onto the agenda. We'll be briefly discussing 4 points. The data quality, how to measure it and what to look at, how to properly manage it through a technology that will allow you to stack it all under, let's say, one roof, and then how to start, where to start with, and basically the most impactful channels we can leverage. Right? Lovely. So first off, let's start with the data quality. So don't let data quality slow you down. Fix it now. Giving my voice over to our expert, Todd.
Well, yes. So one of the questions we asked marketers was, when it came to multi-channel marketing, what's your greatest challenge? And the number one challenge by far was data quality. And Mikhail, this did not surprise me a whole lot when I look at the overall scope of the research we've done on a lot of different topics. Data quality always comes to the top. And, there's many reasons for that. But, if you're starting with either lack of data or data that does not have high quality, right away, you're kind of behind the 8 ball because you don't have the data to make good decisions, or the data is not high enough quality, and so you can't trust your decisions. And so it's always a really good place to start. And I think with multi-channel marketing, you first have to kind of look at, what kind of data do you have? Where is it coming from? And how does it all fit together?
Yeah, that's true. I mean, even off the top of my head, the recent example I can show you guys is that one of the biggest companies we work with had a mild hiccup with the data format, which they didn't agree upon first, and a couple of channels formatted the date field differently. One went with the US style, so month, date, year. The other ones did date, day, month, year. And that basically worked for some period of time until they tried to consolidate the reports, which completely sabotaged the whole data. Basically, it took a couple of serious work hours to fix it straight. A thing that could have been avoided if they planned ahead on how to format and use the data. Another thing that another actually company did is basically not using a clear marking for the data. So instead of actually trying to describe it, trying to make it approachable for other teams, they used codes like 11A, 11B, which wasn't sustainable in the long run. That was a huge issue that costed them some hours and some results. Basically, they had to take a few steps back, which could have been avoided if they actually assessed their data and confirmed the quality they're looking for.
That really, and I think one of the things I wanted to mention throughout this presentation, our research really shows that one area that marketers are struggling with is the lack of an overall strategy. So they're very busy doing a lot of different things. And when you picture maybe your own marketing program, we're talking about multi-channel marketing, so that marketers are doing email and social media, running ads. There's all kinds of data coming in, and so taking some time to step back and look at how you're formatting your data, how it's all coming together, can save you a lot of time on the back end. It might feel like you're slowing down a little bit initially, but I think you'll reap the rewards in the long run.
Yeah, slow and steady wins the race. Basically, it's all about the foundations that we build upon and how we can actually backtrack ourselves easily. Now, the next thing is the measurement of our multi-channel program, so that we actually have to keep tab on how everything is falling together and what to focus on, so we don't, let's say, dive into super detailed data that will in the long run, or might in the long run, feel inadequate to how much work we've put into collecting that data. Todd?
Yeah, and this here comes from a research point that we had in the study that asked marketers what the most essential element was to a successful multi-channel program. And the number one, by far at 71% was an accurate measurement of performance. And when you think about it, that's so critical as you're doing all these different tactics, being able to measure and see, what's working, what's not working, where do I want to spend more money, where do I want to maybe cut back a little bit. Unless you have the measurement down, you're kind of flying blind. And as marketers, we can't afford to do that. We have to be mindful of every dollar we spend, and being able to measure and be able to provide a really an accurate way of saying, kind of turning the knobs, I would say, like on your programs. I want to spend more here, I want to spend less here. This measurement element is really critical, and I'm sure you have some ideas on how to be successful for this, but it's attainable.
Yeah, of course. And many people think that it's very hard, and especially there's a high level of entry that requires them to successfully measure the data. Again, let me rephrase what I said earlier: slow and steady wins the race, right? So if you don't know where to start, you can start at the basics, right? So maybe let me share my screen to show you just two simple automations, straight out of the box solutions that will allow you to measure your data successfully, right? Just a moment, here it is, right? Is my screen visible to you guys? Todd, can you confirm? I can
yes, it is.
Right, so this is actually a very simple workflow. Now, ladies and gentlemen, the thing is that don't get, let's say, overwhelmed with how it looks right now. It's a mechanism that if you invest just a bit of time of a learning curve to pass, it can prove an absolute powerhouse with very little maintenance time. So you get most out of your time instead of just measuring data. This one is a very scalable model on how to fish out your most engaged, most loyal customers. So we track any operation or any action that they do here. It's a simple setup for somebody who's just joined GetResponse and is running his own store. So we are tracking if somebody is opening his messages, and if he is, we add him a point. It's a scoring system that basically allows us to later segment our communications or anything we need based on the score that they have attained. If they click any link, any at all, they get another type of point. Cart abandoned, so that they were interested, but we lacked that last final push to finalize the transaction, which is valuable data to us. And whenever they make a purchase, they make more points. And the thing is that this is extremely easy to set up out of the box, just a couple of elements, and it's very scalable. Whenever you identify along the way that for some users that, for example, purchase certain types of products, the upsell pages work better, or you want them higher because they spend more, we can simply adjust those elements. So we can actually copy and paste it. And instead of doing phones, let's track people who buy laptops, right? And add them and award them with, for example, 10 points, right? The idea is that if you're running some let's say, limited, higher priced product, you will want to target those people with higher score points earlier, or maybe with an additional incentive or with a personalized email, because that gives us the leverage, something to track our campaigns, something to actually make the decision based on. So a very simple out-of-the-box solution that you can adapt for any business. If you're looking for pushing content, you will want to grade openers much higher, frequent openers especially. Another one that I have prepared is a very simple yet extremely effective loyalty program. It's just actually three elements, those three elements looped together for each threshold of the program you might need. So for example, if you're running a shop that focuses on frequent buyers, let's say maybe some food delivery, right? You want to award people who's been most loyal to you with maybe some additional gifts, maybe something else, maybe an ebook of how your product is made. So something that they will actually enjoy, or an award like a discount code, or maybe something free. It's up to you completely. So it's always good to have this knowledge of who's actually spending the most, so you can target those people easily. Right?
Yeah, and I love this example. I found personally through experience of when I start implementing scoring with my own company or with other companies, how it quickly surfaces these little nuggets of gold, right? Things that you never realized. It starts to bring those to the surface. We talked earlier about lack of an effective strategy many times can be a hindrance for companies. Well, this looks complicated on the surface, but what I've always found would be if I can just block out some time on my schedule, maybe just a couple hours where I don't have my emails going, don't have my phone close by, and I can just start thinking about the process and the workflows. It comes pretty quickly, pretty easily. And once you get that automation set up, then you're turning on that learning process. Then you start seeing things and you can adapt after that. So I think that slow and steady concept combined with the strategy can be very powerful.
Yeah, exactly. Plus, it's always nice to scale it. And after some time, after putting those automations in place, certain personas will start to emerge. So you will know who your customers are if they prefer this or that. And it's a very important thing. Also, I wanted to address a question from Dario. Hi, Dario. Can you send only emails in the automation or SMS too? We actually have a broad spectrum of features in the automation itself that include SMS, web push notifications, tracking visits to certain stores, links clicked, abandoning cart, or we can actually even specify certain events. So certain behaviors by our customer on our page that GetResponse will be able to track. So it scratches the surface. But those are very helpful. And another thing is I will export the templates of those workflows for you, and I think we'll attach them to the follow-up email. So you will have something to go on and start with an out-of-the-box solution. Now, let me just pull up, yeah?
Oh, and I was going to say, I know earlier this year, it's not in the research study we did with you, but if anybody ever wants to reach out, we did a study, and it talked about, it really showed the power of SMS, which is a really underutilized, channel for us. So when we're talking about multi-channel marketing, like for example, having that ability to incorporate SMS into the process can be extremely successful. Like I said, we have some research that really shows how when companies are adding SMS, it helps to raise the overall performance of everything. So that's why you want to do this, right? That's why you want to. Everybody's doing multi-channel marketing, whether you like it or not. You're using email and SMS and your website and content. You're using all these different channels. It's just a matter of how you weave them together to have the most success.
Exactly. And it also, in my opinion, adds another layer of personal touch. Emails aren't as personal and as direct as SMS. The SMS really packs a punch because, well, let's be honest, it's hard to avoid it. They will read it. send it. So it is a very strong message. Now, let me just quickly end my screen sharing and bring up the presentation for you again, guys. Here we are. Right. And next on the agenda, we have your marketing technology stack should basically make your life easier, not harder, and have one under one roof. Todd, would you mind sharing some experience?
Sure. One thing's really important and was really highlighted in the research was, really your marketing technology stack should support your overall strategy. And unfortunately, only 14% of the marketing professionals said that they could measure their multi-channel initiatives across all channels. Okay, so we talked a little bit about measurement before. I bring this one up more, I think, to highlight the aspect of, the downside when your technology's not working together to support your strategy. And what you end up having in that case many times is when your technology stack has been kind of, what would I say, like cobbled together, and the data is kind of coming in, not connecting together. You don't have a holistic view of your customers and what they're doing and what they want. So, it's kind of like a tug of war almost between your strategy and the technology, and that's really something that needs to be avoided, at all possible.
Exactly. And plus, let's be honest, it's also about money, because you need to pay for those extra features that you don't have under one roof. Plus, it takes hours basically to combine that data into one solid report. And that's the time you could spend on developing your brand or reaching out to your customers. So time better spent than to consolidating the reports.
Right. And having a more all-in-one solution, the one benefit to that is, especially on the data side. So all your data is together to help, I think, better support the various channels that you're doing. So from, like I said, from email to website interactions, even to things like we have today, like webinars, right? You can pull those all together and have that holistic view of the prospect, or hopefully customer.
Of course, plus if the tools communicate with each other, it's much better or easier, more convenient to create a coherent marketing campaign when one will follow another without your real input or controlling, trying to time them out perfectly. And I actually have prepared a very nice workflow that shows us how to build such a multi-channel campaign in actual live case scenario, because that's actually being used by one of our customers. I'll just need to share my screen. Just a moment, please. Here you are.
And as you're pulling your screen up, I'll just say that we're talking about this from the marketer's perspective, of being able to accomplish what you're trying to accomplish in your multi-channel program. But if you also flip that over and look, it's also providing a better customer experience, right? And so I think that's also critical. So,
of course, in today's world, when social media takes 10 seconds to share an opinion about your reputation is a huge part of your brand and your deal. So just to guys briefly show you what it is. This is actually an abandoned cart. Now, don't get, again, distracted or overwhelmed with the amount of elements. This is the end game of what you should try to achieve, because it was born through multiple tests. And as we said, slowly, it emerged slowly based on the patterns that the customers of the company that uses it reacted or responded to best. So let me walk you through it really briefly, because if somebody abandons a cart in their store, they send an abandoned cart message, a pretty standard practice to follow up to check if we want to, maybe if they want to reclaim the cart. We check then if the message was opened or not. If it was opened, let's see if that person made a purchase afterwards. If they have, let's tag them, because that gives us an information of who responded just to the abandoned cart message. So first line of support. And then we can send up a follow-up SMS And if somebody didn't give his phone number, we can divert it to an email message and then encourage them to give us their phone number. And in that SMS, we can do something very simple like, thank you for supporting our brand. We really appreciate that you purchased our product. Or we can follow up with a discount code for the next purchase. So that way, whenever they will want to purchase the next product, of course, they will first check what we have because they have the discount code. And another thing is that this builds in your customers sort of a positive reaction to when an SMS arrives from you. So they will react to it much better. Now, we need also to account for a moment when they haven't opened the message, or even if they did, they haven't made the purchase. Then let's send them a web push notification. So something that if they agreed to will display directly on their desktop or on their folder or their phone, and try to give them that extra nudge to wrap up the transaction. And then again, we check the same detail if they made a purchase or not. If they had it, we need to tag them accordingly. So they didn't react or respond to the abandoned cart message out of the gate, but with the web push notification, we got them, right? So we want to tag them to later know that those customers aren't really super into, we need some extra push for them. And we let them also to the SMS. So we also appreciate them as they made the purchase. Now, those who proved resistant to our attempts to drive them in will get another tag, because that's something that is also a valuable information that none of our communication methods worked. So there is something we need to address and something we need to find out. We can single those people out, check what products they bought. Maybe that was the issue, something there, maybe the communication. And another thing, when you will be building it, I recommend to use each step to test and drive in as much data as possible. Out of the blue, the best thing is the abandoned cart. Instead of doing one abandoned cart message, we can do a split test. So we can test 3, 4, or 5 designs and see to which of the design in the long run the customers are most likely to respond with actually following up with the purchase. So that gives us another extra layer of data that we can use to improve the way we both communicate and actually share our product, right, and recommend it.
Right. I love that what you said about doing testing throughout the process, because I mean that's music to my ears. I used to work with a testing institution actually, where we did testing, hundreds of thousands of tests a year. And what I would say is, like, as you're going through this process, you're also learning and optimizing what you're doing. And as a marketer, that's very encouraging because you can keep your executive team up to date on the fact that what you're doing, but what you're learning as well. And so there's this constant evolution and improvement that you're having, which I think helps to support you as a marketer within the organization, because all along you're not only just doing things, but you're learning, you're adapting, you're optimizing. And to me, that I think that goes a long way as you're preparing your strategy for the new year, that you're emphasizing to your team that we've also included testing in this process. So it's not just blind faith, you're actually learning as you're going.
Exactly. It's something to back up your argument with the board or the data analysts, right? Why are you making it slow? Because I'm trying to build a quality content and try to find out what our customers like, prefer, what they respond to best. And this is something that in today's world is priceless, the data that our customers make decision based on, right? Okay, lovely. Let me just quickly pull up the presentation back right here. Just a second. Lovely. Right. So the next one is where to start, because I know that people are often overwhelmed when they hear multi-channel campaigns and that the multi-channel has to start right away from the gate. Todd, what are your thoughts about this?
Sure. In our study, I think there was about 15 different tactics that were outlined as far as what was being used. But when you look at the top five, actually top four, email, content marketing, landing pages, and social media were the top four. So if you're doing those already, you can say, well, that's a good place to start, and I can just improve my measurement. I can improve, my workflows. But if you're not, you can start with looking at those to get started. Email still works. Content marketing is essential for the modern marketing process to help them build trust, build understanding to your product. Landing pages, social media. I mean, that's all that engagement component of what you're doing. So I would say, look at the report when it comes to you, but starting with those first four is a really good place to start, and then just thinking about how they all come together.
Yeah, exactly. Build upon them, because when you see that, for example, when you start with a landing page, an autoresponder, some social media posts and email follow-ups, maybe in the meantime, you will find a group of customers who you would like to include in a webinar, for example, to get them to know your brand. They will have nice feelings and try to recommend it, or stay loyal. So it's always about the foundations. We can branch out from there easily, but it's always about building the strong foundations. When you have a good start and good content and you monitor that well, then we can expand forward, right? So if you see, for example, that your autoresponders or the welcome series, the open rate rapidly drops after the 10th email, now you know that it's time to maybe organize a webinar, or maybe use a web push, or switch to an educational series where you know that they are interested. They've been with your autoresponders for a long time. So that might give them more, let's say, relationship with the brand. They will feel more, included in the process, try to associate with it a bit more.
That's right. I mean, one example I could say, like I said, here at Ascend2, we're a research firm. We have companies that come to us, and we put out these, what I consider like, excellent research content pieces. But then we have, those companies are using email and social media, setting up landing pages, all these different ways to take that one content piece and then have multiple ways of using it throughout their funnel, right? So from getting people to come to their website to how they engage with them once they come to their website. So, as a marketer, you can start laying out, like, what are we doing, and how can we incorporate additional tactics, additional channels to maximize the value of what we're doing. And, I think that's one of the things that, as marketers, we can struggle with, is we do one tactic, and then we move on to the next thing. So in this illustration, you create one great content piece, and then you move on to create the next content piece. Well, maybe by incorporating a more multi-channel marketing approach, you can get more out of that first piece.
Exactly. Right. Absolutely. Right. And on to the next one. So start slowly with the number of channels that you use, which basically connects right back into what we just discussed. But I know that most of you had this experience when you signed up for a store, one product you needed, and then you were flooded with SMS invitations, web push were trying right off the bat. You got 6 emails about it. I don't know about you, but I, from the get-go, immediately run. That's the thing. Too much. They don't know me. They don't know who I am. So the strong foundations will allow you to also match what you have with what your business needs, because every business is different, and your customers might prefer a maybe lower or higher volume of contact or channels, right? And those 4 are very strong foundations, not only because they fulfill strong needs and desires of your customers, but they are also extremely easy to build upon.
That's right. And we find in our research too that most people have a preference in how they want to engage with you. So you might have somebody who would never respond to an SMS that was sent to them, and then another person who that's all they'll respond to. So, whenever you eliminate something you could be eliminating entire groups, or at the very least, the preferences they have. And I think one good illustration may be, maybe they'll buy once via email, but if that's not their primary preference, lifetime value may be much higher when you're incorporating SMS into the picture or other things. So, you might get one sale because they're desperate for your solution, but maybe long term you're missing out. So I think all this is just something you have to step back and look at your strategy. Start slow, but plan to keep incorporating new things over time. It doesn't have to be immediate, but over time have a long-term strategy.
Yeah, exactly. And adjustability is also the convenience of it. Here, for example, using the automations I showed you, it's very easy to adjust them, to incorporate the new channels, or to use the data that the channels you added right now will support the effort of the earlier ones. Great example, the loyalty program. For example, you want to send or will want to send more intricate or maybe more personalized email to people who proven to be your loyal customers, and you don't want to get too direct with people who just purchased. You want to welcome them, lure them in slowly. With real loyal customers, you can go in and they will welcome your message. So this is how adding more channels will actually strengthen the foundations you have. So it's a two-way street, and it is really important to plan ahead and to try to include your business knowledge and your knowledge of your customers, to adjust it to your business model.
Right. When you treat everybody the same, most of the time nobody's happy, right? So, and we've all experienced this where like you said, you made one purchase and all of a sudden the tone on the communication is like your best friends. and you're thinking, I barely know this company. But then on the other side of it, like you said, the loyalty program, it can be where you've purchased many times and they're treating you like they barely know you. And that can have a very negative effect. So even having those separate workflows and having that loyalty program can be extremely valuable to those high-end people, but also I think to the beginners, because you're treating them probably in the proper communication that they're expecting.
Yeah, exactly. Like first email, hi, hello, thank you for using our brand. The 30th email, how are you going? I hope you're going great, right? Something that a frequent customer will welcome, and something that might off-put certain new customers if we get too familiar with them. That's another advantage of having it all under one roof, because the functions, the features, the channels, they all, let's say, talk with each other, because one feeds data into the other one. If you would have to do it manually, it takes a lot of time. If you pre-plan it with automation, you plan and design it once, and it will keep running forever, right? Until you adjust it or make changes to it, or prefer to go with a different strategy. Right. So I think that covers some of it, not to an extent, but that's a broad subject. Now, if you would like to learn more, the report prepared by Todd Company will be also included in the follow-up email. I think you'll find it very interesting with live case scenarios, and this really is a gold mine. Just remember, adjust it for your company, and don't be afraid to experiment, to test, try out. Nothing will work 100% for your company. You know your company best and your customers, and you need the data to come in. And we're always happy to help. I'm an automation expert in GetResponse. So if you will be up for the challenge to design them, I'm always available for you guys for consultations and support of my knowledge. And now let's get on to the Q&A section. Guys, is there anything on your mind that you would like to ask us? Some tips, pointers, some strategies, something for Todd, and need to use his experience as a unique?
Mm-hmm. And as we're looking here for questions, one thing I did want to just point out would be, it really is, Mikhail, thank you for being very open and kind of sharing these examples. And one of the things I would highly recommend would be, tap into experts at companies like GetResponse and try to get some examples. Ask them for examples maybe that are similar to your company. Kind of leverage their experience to apply to your strategy. So it's always comforting, and I think it makes a lot of sense to just tap into experiences they've had and recommendations that they can give you.
Yeah, exactly. It's always a pleasure to brainstorm. We got tons of experience, millions of customers under our belt. So we're happy to share that knowledge. And now Dario asked us a question. So top 3 channels to be used in multi-channel marketing approach. Todd, your 3 best channels.
Sure. The 3 I would put out: social media, your website and landing pages, and email. It's very interesting. A lot of people, for, I would say, the last 5 years, everybody's been trying to kill email. Well, it's not quite dead. Actually, what we find is email is still very, very successful, especially when marketers are, moving away from, blasting emails out and using automation to send more targeted emails. So I would say, social media, websites, and email, those 3. You really have to add, in some respects, the overarching component to that would be content marketing, because for all those, content marketing is kind of what I would say is your fuel to make it all work. But build up your email list, and by doing what you need to do is ask your prospects or your customers as soon as possible to get that email, and that requires trust that you'll use it appropriately. And then, of course, obviously social media. And I would say with social media, just again, this is why multi-channel is so important. Social media is great, but at some point you want to get other data about them so you can communicate with them at other times besides that social media platform.
And I have to agree with Todd here. Like, there's no other way for me as well, out of my experience: email, landing pages, social media, because you also target 3 groups that can and prefer to use them independently. Some will use Google to try to stumble on your landing page or be directed there from social media. Some prefer emails and don't really divulge in the social media madness right now. So it also helps you broaden your target audience. It's just, if you can use it, it's good to use it, right? Because that's some extra ways of reaching out to your customers. Now, off to another question. So Maggie, do you have any strategy tips when targeting the tech industry, notoriously allergic to most standard marketing approaches? Okay, out of experience, as I'm a tech guy, it's the least the better, because you need to know that the tech guys, the IT and stuff like that, they're curious. They are used to digging for information and they want answers. So out of my approach, usually if you can send them an email, one email with some minimal data, very polite, and asking them, would you like to learn more? Because if they won't, they will not respond. They will report your messages as spam, which will hurt your deliverability. So the key to, in my opinion, is to actually lure them in, not go after them. That's the difference.
Yes. And I would say, I think earlier in the presentation when you were showing some workflows and you talked about the fact that more data you collect, you can start setting up personas. And many times what I've found in the technology space is there might be multiple personas that you have, right? So you might have the very technical person, and that person, for example, then you're going to want to think about the kind of content you send them, versus maybe, you might have the developer versus the application person, right? So you have different personas, which will require different content that you send them, and maybe even their preference for how they like to interact with you. So that's one place where you can't get by without having automation. You really have to have automation. It's not that complicated when you have automation and the platform, but if you don't, it's impossible. It's really impossible to do.
True. You need to, exactly like Todd said, build persona. Track, for example, which links they click, or plain out ask them, are you interested in that, or are you interested in that? Because we would like to personalize your communication. They are down to the bone, down to the core details, guys. So you avoid, huge emails that will require them to scroll through it, chunks of informations that will basically work better with that type of personality who is a data driven type of people, the tech industry.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's also, this is a great conversation. Please feel free to email us or contact us for further like in-depth conversation. I love this topic. I would say that with the technology space also, it's typically what I would call like a complex sale. So there's multiple people involved in the process. And so realizing that is very critical. So like, having the ability to know like, okay, this person influences the decision, but this person here actually purchases.
Yeah.
There's typically multiple people involved, a longer sales cycle, which also means that you kind of have to have that automation in place to be able to handle that as well. That's a fascinating industry. So yeah, feel free to ask more questions about that.
Yeah, exactly. Absolutely. I agree. If you manage to segment them based on what their messages they interact with, you know that the salesperson will target for comprehensive data, customer support. So the way they can get support for the product they purchased, or, just get some information, while the down to the core tech guys who will check specifics will appreciate sending them raw messages, specifics. They go through it and they can feedback their own salesperson, right? So it's all about adjusting it to the people you're going after, right? Because you need to have those personas. And that's why the multi-channel and the automation will actually help you automatically create them.
Exactly. Great question.
Yeah, absolutely. That goes for every other industry as well. You need to think about who the customer will be and what they will like. And if you don't have a clue or where to start, or you never actually encountered the inside of such a company, we're here to help. It's actually a pleasure to brainstorm or create strategies and overcome those kind of challenges. And in the long run, when we set it up from the get-go, it can seriously improve your whole business revenue, let's say, in the long run, when you get enough data to precisely target the person you will with the way they prefer.
That's right.
Lovely. So anybody else got some doubts? Maybe something you need to brainstorm over? Someone's typing.
If you just to let you know, my company ascend2.com. If you go there, we have a lot of free research, and so you might be able to find some. I know we have some things that kind of specifically talk about the technology space. So there might be some additional content that you can pick up there just to help with some of the topics that you're looking at, because it's multi-channel, but then it's also like, for example, nurturing and different things like that you can look at in more depth. So visit the site; it's all free.
Absolutely. And I do recommend it because some of the things, even for me as a person who's deep in the business, are an eye opener. Some approaches that I would never even consider when having the set of data. So, Todd, is ascend2.com the correct link? Somebody is asking from the chat window.
Yes, ASCEND and the number 2.com.
Oh. So
I'll put that in the chat for everybody.
Yeah, just to confirm. Right. So seriously, take a look at the report. The tech company I'm with is it's a question from Maggie. Sorry, guys, I got excited for the questions. The tech company I'm with is a startup currently targeting SRE and developers. What are some of the hardest hurdles for a tech startup? Oh, it does depend. Developers are very specific customers. Todd, do you have some experience maybe you can share on this one?
I did. Before I started Ascend2, I was working for a company that actually did software solutions for developers. So I should have quite a bit of experience in that area. What I found in that area was it took a really high level of what I would say like focused content. You had to have very you know you had to kind of you had to really understand uh, how to speak to that audience, and get your mind out of like for me, I had to get away from speaking like a marketer and speaking in the language of a developer, and so that took a little bit of time, but it was that audience also required a lot of building of trust.
Yep.
So I think that's something, and you see that across all industries, but like in that one, many times they wanted very specific answers to specific questions, and you have to trust the process of being able to be more specific, and that will build brand loyalty in time, but it doesn't happen overnight. At least I didn't typically find that.
It's just Maggie said this is also her biggest challenge, and I agree. But the thing to keep in mind, Maggie, I think, is that it's worth the effort, because once you break that barrier of their indifference, and once you get on their good side, this is where they will start to recommend your company, your solutions, if somebody will ask. And those recommendations in the developer's environment are priceless. They are an absolute engine that will help you drive it. It's just that you first need to, just as Todd said, identify them, see what they respond to best. But it's an effort that's really worth to put it in, because it will pay off in the long run even more than with other companies. Sorry, not companies, but personas, right? So non-developers. And
so for example, we about 2 years ago we did for a startup technology company, we did a research study because they were it was a technology that helped SQL users, and so we were able to go out and actually find that audience, do a research study that really helps two things. It helped answer some specific questions for the industry, so they could have kind of like a state of report, which was very popular. But then also it allowed them to see what was most important to that audience, and then they could start not only adjusting their product, but also adjusting their messaging based on what was most important to the audience. So a lot of different ways to handle it, but that was one way they did it. Was that research study kind of helped them then set up all their channels with the right messaging.
Yeah, I absolutely recommend to look into the report that will follow up with the after the webinar, and also to check out Todd's page with the reports they have, because this will help you understand the mindset that they have. Something a little bit more from behind the curtain of the developers world, which I know seems nearly impenetrable, but that's because they are exposed to that type of stuff constantly. So you need to actually, differ yourself from the other ones, and also exactly lure them in a bit based on the personas they will display.
Mm-hmm.
Right, lovely. Anybody else is interested or some questions? It's always happy to help. All right, I think there's a lot to process. Guys, if you will need any help later on, let us know. I'm the first line of support when it comes to automation and tech problems in GetResponse. So if you will have some questions following up the webinar, just send me an email, refer to the webinar, and I'm more than happy to help. Right? And if you need reports and everything, I encourage you to visit Ascend too, because you will find some really worthwhile data there that will help you a lot.
Yes, thank you. It's been a pleasure. Thanks. I know everybody's busy, so thank you for taking time out of your day to be on this call, and feel free to reach out to us with additional questions.
Thank you, and have a lovely day, guys. Bye-bye.
Bye.